Hello, everyone. This is Yu Tsai. Welcome to Let's Talk. And it's Tuesday again. That means it's our Giving Tuesday special editions of Let's Talk. And I am so excited to be here every single day on Tuesday because I get to talk to people in the food industry as well as the beverage industry, learning about the impact that this pandemic have on their businesses, how they are pivoting in order for the company to continue to survive and help the people around them. And most importantly, they continue giving back to the community. And that is why you're here. Giving Tuesday. So let's talk. My first guest today is Codigo 1530 Senior Director, Brice Erichsen. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
And now, well, let us know where you are right now.
So as of right this moment, I am doing a little quarantine up in a random state of Iowa. This is actually family home up here. So sitting by a lake, trying to wait out the craziness. So headquarters is actually in Boulder, Colorado, just outside. And then, of course, our operations are all based in Jalisco, Mexico. So we're kind of spread out all over the place. But in the world of digital, we kind of work wherever we need to.
And it's just naturally the business that everybody kind of spread out in different areas when you operate back in a normal time?
To an extent, yeah. So we have all of our operations based in our headquarters in Boulder, Colorado. However, for this business to work well, we have to have our fingers kind of all over the US and international. So we have an office in Singapore. We have some business operations in Europe. And then, of course, a bulk of US. So we have kind of our friends, our full sales team and marketing team is spread out throughout the US and through the globe. So we're better off in the specific markets we're working in. So we're kind of all over the place.
Well, a little bit of introduction on Codigo 1530. It's a tequila brand. And tell us a little bit of history about the brand.
Yeah, I mean, the quick history, whether you're a tequila drinker or not, is that it's always been a little private tequila. So some of the best tequilas in Mexico aren't really available for sale. They're just kind of made for some select families and really small batch. So over the last 10 or 15 years, there have been some individuals down there drinking it and thought it was time to take this little intimate tequila club to the masses so they could drink it more places when they traveled. So that was kind of the beginning. It was just a matter of how can we support the families that are making it without making any changes or compromises. So that was kind of the beginning, and hence the namesake Codigo, which is just simply the codes or the agreement with the families making it. We wouldn't change the process at all. And that was a part of what was so special.
Well, what's so special about tequila is that there's a lot of steps in order to making them. So in the process, you have to have a huge team and employees. Go through a little bit of the head counts on the process and whose fingers and tips are actually involved in making this product, because that is truly a chain effect that happens in this pandemic.
Yeah. You say that just right, is that, most of the spirits we drink, so we think of whiskey or bourbon, vodka, gin, everything's made from grain for the most part. And in which case grain grows in a big field, and there's not a whole lot of hands that touch it once it is distilled and made into to alcohol. Whereas the unique spirit of tequila and the agave spirits, including mezcal, you've got a landowner that actually has to house or has to field thousands of acres for the agave plants. Then you have the farmer that actually is growing and raising, and usually agave plant will grow from 3 to 7, even more years. Then you've got the humidors that harvest it, and then the truckers that bring it over to the distilleries, and then all the hands at the distillery, and it has to be bottled and labeled. And small distilleries like ours are labeling by hand, so that's a lot of bodies that are needed.
Wow.
Then you ship it up to the States, and you've got importers that work through it and warehouses that check it, then to a distributor, and the distributor out to the bar, restaurant, or liquor store. So when we look at a pandemic and what it affects, although we might have plenty of agave in the fields, there has to be somebody that is healthy enough to harvest it. And then once it's harvested, it only has a matter of a couple of days before it has to be cooked and then fermented. So every step requires a lot of different skill sets. And if one of them is missing in the supply chain, then as you can imagine, everything slows down really quick.
Well, how does it work now that we know that the end point is actually to consumer consumption? Now the consumer consumption is being blocked where we cannot socialize and gather to enjoy the beverage. How does that affect you all the way back to the top?
Well, see, that's the best part, is that the most important part of the whole supply chain is the person that sells it and serves it. So when we lose our bartenders and our servers in the entire bar and restaurant industry, we lose the most important part of our industry. So we can make as much as we wanted to, but if we can't get it into the hands of the people that like it, and especially for a small craft like ours, if we don't have somebody that's educating and sharing what's unique and special about the tequila, then all of a sudden you lose what's so important about our brand and a lot of these small craft distilleries across the globe. So when that slows down, then all of a sudden we see the ripple effect all the way back to the distillery, to the farmers, to at what point do we hold, or do we just simply produce and save it for the rainy day when everything is back to normal? So it's very important for us to foster the bars and restaurants while they're seeing a tough downtime, to make sure that everybody is able to come out of this with their head strong.
And so for your distillery, you guys did not stop production. You continue to produce at this time.
We'd softened a lot. In all frankness, there's some precarious times down there, as there is anywhere. But with the virus hitting the regions, at first the government decided to start locking some things down, mainly, and we're seeing a large part of the brewing industry. So all the beers are being shut down because of the risk of the virus. Now, there's a little loophole with the agricultural side of the tequila industry that's allowing distilleries to decide themselves. So we have a very small skeleton crew right now. And of course, every day temperature readings and masks, and everybody's following as close a protocol as we can, but still keeping the lights on.
That's absolutely amazing, because we know the trickle-down effect that when we first hear from a consumer standpoint, when restaurants are closed, we're just thinking about how we're going to eat, how we're going to, now we have to cook 3 meals a day at home and some even more than that. And that becomes a stress and burden. But what we often forget, guys out there, is that when the restaurants close, it affects so many people all the way down to the base of the farmers. And I begin to feel that in the early stage of this pandemic, as my dad is a farmer, he's a mushroom farmer. And when the consumers are not going to the store to buy, it goes all the way to the root of the soil of my father's farm. And we can see that it's so important for companies like yours out there, continue to support the crew as much as you can, keep people employed. Because when you're working, you get the spirit of the energy that you continue to be happy. And some of us need that. And I'm so grateful to hear that your company's philosophy is not to close down. In fact, it's continued to process and work in the most safe way in order to have the spirit for people when we go back to the new normal. Right. And I want to talk about that little new normal too. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. No mean to cut you off.
I was just gonna share that, we talk about keeping the lights on and a skeleton crew down at the distillery. I mean, you've got a lot of these individuals, these men and women that are both, single providers for their families. So as soon as we start closing the doors or minimizing staffing, that's the food that they can no longer buy, or the risk is so significant. So we're trying to keep that crew in and cycling through so that we can keep some kind of a revenue stream down there to support the families.
It's incredible. And when we do this process, that we know that food is no longer just food. Restaurants not just about feeding the soul. It's truly about sharing and celebrating. I think we took all that for granted in the back of the old normal. And we're all looking forward to the new normal where we all can gather together. And God knows that when we say we're going to get together, people are talking about getting together to have a little drink. So I do think that for your company, it's smart, and it's a good strategy to continue to store them. Teach us a little bit about tequila. It's something that tequila stores well. You can keep it for a long time. Yeah. How do you, especially for small distillery, how do you maintain that balance of economics? As you cannot continue to produce when there's no purchasing orders filling in.
That's right. And what you talked about at the very beginning, it's the pivot. What do we do different? How do we keep our own lights on, and how do we keep it available for those that are drinking? The joke in the industry is that when times are good, people drink, and when times are bad, people drink more, right? So what you see is a shift. And Mike had mentioned the people that are getting hit the hardest on the producer side are really the small distilleries, these small mom and pops. And reason is we just don't have as many people that know about the spirit or the product, and why maybe it's an extra couple of bucks because of just being premium. So when we lose our bartenders and our service industry, we don't have that word of mouth help. So for us, the pivot is we've seen a lot of shift towards on-premise sales, so online sales. So when people can't go to liquor stores, they usually try to buy and have it shipped. So we're donating 30% of our proceeds for all online orders through the end of the month to the USBG Emergency Relief Fund to kind of help bartenders and guys and gals in the industry, front of house mostly. And then separate, same thing to make sure they get the doors back open again is we just launched last week a 4-week campaign that's a sweepstake style for donations, but that would allow all proceeds to go to the James Beard Foundation. They have a new Open for Good to support independent restaurants and bars. So whatever we can do on our side to help these guys and gals get their doors back open is how we all thrive at the end of this.
Well, that's incredible. Keeping the, and I've been on this talk show for like 10 weeks, and through the process, every week I get to speak to people in the industry, and I do that continuously because every single time I'm on here, I'm learning more and more about how people are being affected in such a different ways. I had Chef Yu Tsai on last week, talk about Blue Dragon, the restaurant that he has in Boston, and half the restaurant is a bar, and that was the first time I actually understood the profit margin of the bar is what keeps the restaurant experience alive, and it's such a crucial part of our industry. And that's why I wanted you on here to kind of share that story with us. Often we forget, like, oh, we drink a glass of wine, we feel good. We forget that how many people, like you said, have to touch that product in order to get it to where you can actually enjoy. And at this time, what's most important, what I'm seeing that everyone doing and contributing is looking back at the community and how they can help, and knowing that you are so connected with the chefs out there. It's a great position and great place to be, because I have learned that any kind of catastrophe, any kind of natural causes, and like a pandemic, the first responders arrives, the chefs arrive with the first responders. They cook for them.
Very well said.
And for you guys to continue to support your community with the James Beard Foundation collaboration, and 30% profit goes to a donation. That's incredible. And 30% profit, not 30% drinking alcohol. So.
That's right. That's right. Well, yeah, you mentioned it right. Is that it's when our society has the need to now again be social, whether that be in small groups in their own house or going to a restaurant and bar, it's just a piece of what we all need to do. And somehow spirits and food go hand in hand with both of those occasions. So, seeing some of the restaurants now using their skeleton staff themselves to do these to-go cocktails and to-go food options really helps us to be able to support bars, restaurants, to be able to buy a dinner that we wouldn't otherwise prepare for ourselves, or buy a cocktail kit that is much more exciting than I would have made in my home bar, right? So these little opportunities to keep the lights on for these bars and restaurants, especially the independents, is really going to be helpful when they start opening back up again. We kind of expect there's always that negative side, right? Right now, all indications show that about 25% of the bars and restaurants, 1 in 4, probably won't make it for a reopen. So we have to be just very helpful as a whole community to make sure we're supporting those that are still struggling to survive and get back open again.
Well, it's important to mention too that during this time, I think a lot of restaurants and food buyers are really appreciating farm to table mentality, and really appreciate the relationship they develop over the years with the farmers direct, because those are actually the producers more cost effective now, farm to direct produce, because all the big companies that you see on the news are not able to process the meat, so they close. And what I love about tequila and this conversation we had yesterday is that it's such a sustainable product. It is agave, it grows like weeds, and it does take time to grow, but it's a sustainable product. Let's talk about that for a little bit, because we know agave is it's part of the process of making tequila. But one of the most amazing thing I found out yesterday, what you can do with the byproducts while you're creating that's amazing liqueur. So
yeah, and long before the agave was ever made to be a spirit or something that would give us a little bit of a fun buzz, it had always been used as a textile. So everything from shoes to roof thatching, it has a really long history, and especially rich with Mexican culture. So advance that, obviously now we're drinking it, consuming it. So what can be done with the byproduct or the excess of the plant itself? So option one, you can put it back on the field, either as compost or as fertilizer. And that's what we historically have done a lot of, because it's a way to get right back onto land and help make sure that soil is nutrient rich. But we've recently started a process where we use those fibers from that same plant to make some biodegradable straws. So biodegradable straws for bars and restaurants, and biodegradable cups for events, patio programs, and what have you. So for us, it was never designed to be a profit-driving piece. It was just, how can we use what we already have access to fulfill a need, which is, unfortunately, we're all going to use straws for a while. As much as we're trying to curtail our usage, some consumers use them. So having a biodegradable option to solve some of the problems that we're seeing in pollution and everything else, our little chance to give back with the resource we're already using. So just one of many ways for everybody to find different ways, even though it might not be industry norm, but how can we make a difference with what we're doing?
You couldn't say it better. That's amazing, because I think during this time, a lot of us are reflecting our own footprint, what we have done over the years, and how we're affecting the ecology around us. And especially I know that in my industry, in fashion and photography, we're all learning that what little we actually need in the industry, that everything is about showy, from catering, serving 100 people when you only have 30 just so you can show off your set. This happens a lot in our industry, and I'm first to admit that. And a lot of food gets wasted at the end of the day. So I'm one of those guys who bring a box and then takes everything home and then figure out what I can do with it, because because my dad's a farmer, so I've seen how to make sure that you are doing sustainable businesses, and then knowing that, like, next time I take a shot of tequila, I'm helping the environment. Gets a little easier to swallow.
little bits and pieces. And I'll even say we go to the extent of recycling, if you want to use that phrase, our wine barrels. So we bring wine barrels from the industry up in Napa Valley, bring them down, use those to age our tequila. So we don't use any new barrels; they're all recycled. So once the wine industry is done with them, we use those to age the tequila. But it's kind of that reciprocal, is that how do you borrow from other industries or other services in the region to kind of benefit and grow? I'd say we never were in the industry or never sought out to be a straw manufacturer, but
Right.
if it makes sense and if it's a value add for everybody, it's kind of one of our duties to be responsible where we can.
And it's such a great example, because we see that in the fashion industry, where perfume makers switch and pivot and start making sanitizers when we're running out. Clothing stylists, they're making patents for masks so people can make them at home. I think as this pandemic grows, and more clients I see out there, that we're all collectively coming together to find ways that we can help. And a lot of times, how you can help is actually your daily activity, what you do already. And that's what I'm seeing with your company. I think that's incredible, because that's something I hope that continues when this pandemic is over. And it will be a day that's over, guys. I know it. We just have to be patient. So
That's right.
So we know the business part of it, you have it handled quite well. You have it in a great place, that your employees are empowered and they're able to work. How are you able to keep the spirits up for the people that work for you? Because you are distant apart. You're not there to be side by side. And in your medium to small size businesses, all about community and communication. How are you able to keep everyone in a good place mentally?
Yeah, truly, the best thing that we could do, because we're all so closely tied to the industry, is understanding our friends and our colleagues that are bartenders, service industry, own bars and restaurants, how we can support them. So we did some care packages. We've helped provide dinners where possible if they're doing big shift or staff dinners. But more so, like, our spirits are lifted when we can help get them back to work and help bridge the gap. So I think for us, we kind of all switched gears quickly as what can we do to help everybody else? At that point, we were, under the understanding that, sales are going to decrease, or if not full on stop, but who else is being affected and who else can we help, get through this mess together? And we didn't know if it was 1 week or 1 year. So you do what you can, with the small resources you have to make an impact. And the one thing that we have is bodies. So, helping out, sharing what we have access to see if anybody else can weather the storm.
And from being here, speaking to so many people in the industry, I find that we have a different spectrum. Some businesses actually flourish because they have already established takeout philosophy, and some companies are struggling because they were in a middle medium market where there was no takeout, there's no outdoor seating, and they're trying to find ways to pivot as well. And I think that's what we're all doing. We're all trying to find a way, and then one commonality is to be able to serve the community again, whether that's a glass of liquor, whether it's a glass of wine, or a plate of food. We're all trying to find a way to get together and do it safely, and that's the biggest challenge. And for you, do you see that with these challenges happening, the online sale actually goes up, and it's actually be able to support it? How long? I guess my question is, I've been talking to the restaurant owners, and a lot of them would tell me that 50% capacity does absolutely nothing for the business. In fact, it hurts them in the first 3 months because the margin is just not there. How do you go about able to sustain your business part of it? Because we can gather in a bar, and people, I don't believe, will wear a mask and go and hang out at a bar and trying to, have a shot.
Right. There's going to be a part of the population that's going to just come right back in full force. We know that. That's inevitable. That's the good part as far as getting some bodies back indoors. but we're gonna, like I say, see a small loss in independents just not being able to open the doors again. What I see as our biggest opportunity is if we can sustain the to-go orders and to-go cocktails. There was some legislation that was lifted, right? Usually it's not legal in most states. If some of that is either extended or maybe even here to stay, it gives a small competitive advantage for these restaurants and bars reopening to be able to compete with some of the liquor stores that are currently kind of benefiting from the restaurant closures. So I think for me, it's being able to promote and push the to-go orders and to-go cocktails and even to-go wine or whatever they're able to do in the short term, and ideally as long as possible, as long as regulatory makes sense. And then for us, if we know that our favorite restaurant isn't allowing more than half capacity, we can still call ahead, see if we can get the order at least to pick up and enjoy in our own patios.
Well, what a great lesson to learn. So what I've learned today, guys, is that not only do you order from your local restaurants, order a glass of liquor to go with it. Because it in fact is the area that has more margin in the area, because food industry, the margin is so low. It's only the holidays and weekends and makes up all the time that they're just there to serve you and deliver good food and good drinks. So I know that I'm not a good alcohol drinker. I think I'm going to start learning after this talk so I can contribute to the community.
Yeah, support with wine, beer, spirits, and also gift cards. If you're not hungry today and you want to be hungry in a month, this is a way to get them back, to allow more staffing and to get them back to business as soon as possible. So I think gift cards are a great investment for us in their future.
And one more question before I let you go is that is your tequila direct to consumer as well?
Unfortunately, just because of the crazy liquor laws coming out of Prohibition, we can't. So best case we do is there's plenty of online retailers that are selling and able to ship or deliver. So that's the best case scenario. Most of us have heard of Drizzly or Reserve Bar, all the common ones, and even most local liquor stores have some kind of a delivery service or at least a pickup. So that's the best option. But yeah, the hope is that between our liquor stores and our bars and restaurants getting back open, that we'll be able to get through this as well as everybody else.
Well, thank you so much for your service out there, and thank you so much for keeping the spirits out there, because we need it, and one glass at a time,
Absolutely.
And what's most important, all joking aside, is that do keep this in mind, guys, for you guys are watching out there. Remember, it's not just about the food. The beverage industry is a trickle-down effect, and all pun intended and unintended. That is a trickle-down effect that affects everyone all the way down to the farmer. And knowing that there's a business like yours and that it is a company that care about the employees and take care of them, making sure they're still alive, and be able to keep that going already is so helpful. And knowing that you continue to contribute into the community around you is something that we can learn, and you're such a great example of that. So thank you so much for being here to share that story with us.
Very flattered to be here and be a part of your show. So keep doing what you're doing. Good sir.
Thank you so much.